Chess friends, hope you are doing well. Today I am going to show you a very exciting and incredible chess game that was played between me and LeelaZero. This game is very mind-blowing and included a knight sacrifice to expose her center and queen side, so let's get started without wasting any time. I started the game with e4 and here Leela could have gone with e5, then I could move my knight to its natural square. Consequently, I could play f4, initiating the Vienna gambit, but in our actual game, Leela decided to play differently. She played d6, a different approach from all other chess engines. In a few moves, we had knight f6, where another knight could go to the c6 square to play authentically. You know you have to play your best when you are playing against the god of chess. We had e4, and this position has been reached many times in Lichess's database where white exchanges their queens. That move is also played by Magnus Carlsen, who is afraid of losing against an Indian prodigy. Magnus is the super intelligent chess player, but he is afraid of some Indian chess prodigies. That's the power of India. So in this position, when knight d7 was played to stabilize the structure, I played a very cunning move, g4. This move is very appropriate because it directly attacks the king side. Capturing the pawn might seem reasonable, but after rook g1 comes on the board, playing knight to f6 might be a desirable move for some chess players. However, after bishop c4 comes on the board, it will put pressure on the pawn. c6 might be considered by many chess players to advance the queen side, then I can exchange in the center and play knight g5 on the board, and you can see that your position will be lost due to my attacking knight and bishop. This strategy is mostly played by 1000 rated players, and in this position, even though playing knight takes e5 is the best move to defend your position, the game could continue like that. In the previous position, some of you might be tempted to capture the pawn on d4, but my queen will be activated in the center. Whenever your queen gets activated in the center, it will create more pressure on the center and king side, and you can see that knight g5 can come eventually to attack the f7 pawn. It's like my soldiers have rifle ground attack and air attack to combine in your position. So going back to the position, noticing that the rook file was opened, and a few moves ago when Leela considered her structure in this way, I have two dominant center pawns. When knight d7 occurred in the game, I played g4. This is a very authentic move that you can play in your games to open up your rook file, and we discovered that knight f6 was not possible, which is why we have h5. But after h3 happened in the game to kick out your knight. Still, your knight cannot retreat to the f6 square because my pieces will dominate in the center, and bishop to g5 can come anyway. However, I will consider bishop e3, something like g6 to activate the bishop diagonal was considered by black. Here I will play bishop to c4, extend the center pawns, and bring my queen to the d3 square. You can see that this position is dominated by me because you cannot play short side castle because the pawn is pinned down, which is why I can capture the g6 pawn. The best move or the good move should be queen e7. After playing long castle, it is very difficult to choose a good move for black in this position. It's very difficult and challenging. Even playing b6 c6 or knight b6 is a very poor move because I can disrespectfully play bishop c5, attacking your queen. The point is that you cannot capture my queen right away because queen to d8 will be a checkmate. In this position, noticing that the bishops are making significant pressure on your position, you have nothing to move, your position is just stuck and paralyzed by my pieces. Playing b6 to protect that square is also a poor move because it will expose your center, where I can immediately sacrifice my bishop on f7. My pieces are just made for sacrifice. Your pieces are like soldier power, pawn power. But my pieces are like Spider-Man, they can sacrifice on any square at any time. Even I can sacrifice my knight on e5, the point is that you cannot capture the knight because of queen d8. As the queen moves, knight comes to g6, and eventually, e5 will come to kick out your knight. This position is just lost for you. You cannot move back your knight because there is queen g6 after I play knight to f4 to kick out your queen. The position holds significant advantages for me. For instance, some may think of playing knight takes e5, thinking, hey Stockfish, it is a good move to consider. What is your plan? Hey idiot, my plan is to check you on d8 and capture the pawn on c7. I will attack your king, and as the knight blocks, rook to d6 will come. You can see that your queen has no retreating square. Regardless of the queen move, I can play a cunning move. Can you imagine that move? I know you cannot imagine that move because you are not Stockfish. Stockfish is the one and only one, and that is always me, and you are just a shoes for my legs. I will consider queen c4 check, and your position will be stuck, your king will be trapped, and you will lose the queen on the next move, and I will win the game completely. So going back to the position, we discovered that playing knight to f6 is a very bad choice, but LeelaZero played a very tactical move, knight to h6, because she is not like a human chess player who will consider a seemingly natural-looking move and play before thinking. It defends the f7 pawn from being attacked by the bishop and knight. So after bishop c4 and c6 occur on the board to prevent any sort of knight entry point in the center, it simultaneously opens up the queen's diagonal. A couple of moves later, we have center exchanges and queen to f6, offering me a queen exchange. But you know what, LeelaZero? If you offered me something else, I might accept, but a queen exchange I could not accept because I want to defeat you in chess. Whenever you become angry after being defeated by me, you become so cute. So let me defeat you by playing queen d1. In this position, some may consider playing bishop e7, thinking that it is a good move, but you know what? Bishop g5 will come with the joint forces of two bishops, that's the bishop power, you know. When a thunderbolt appears in the sky, first the light comes and then the sound. It is akin to my bishops. First, the threat comes, then the attack. It will be a devastating position for you. So, let me share a beautiful quote in sudden with you. Appreciate every little beautiful moment in every day of your life, give it a try and you'll see the world from another perspective. Going back to the position, even playing any normal kind of move is not viable. That's why she moved back her queen in order to protect her position by playing f6, that's her strategy. She can even develop her knight and bishop occasionally, so I respond with a4. This a4 move is very tactical because it launches an attack on the queen side. I am attacking on the g-file, my knight, along with the bishop, is creating much pressure. After knight f6 to open up the bishop, we have knight g5 to attack the f7 pawn. Playing bishop d7 followed by castle is just a vulnerable move because I can push forward my a-pawn. Eventually, I can play queen d3 and long castle. That's my strategy, you know. When you drink water, the water becomes body cells, and when you move pieces on the chessboard, they become your team. That's the beauty of chess, it consists biological messages. We have bishop capturing on e6. And you can see that Leela has 3 pawns in the center and 2 pawns on the A and B squares. She is eventually threatening to consider d5 to dominate the center, and thus, she cannot play long castle. You know the reason very well. Her knight on h6 is very dumb, like a lazy man with bad luck. He can do nothing in this position. After queen e2 comes on the board, it becomes evident that the pawn is under attack, and she responds with d5 immediately. We have bishop to b3. Considering d takes e4 will give me the opportunity to play bishop g5, pinning down the knight, and knight to e4 will come eventually to put pressure on the f6 knight. That is my strategy, which is why LeelaZero tried to consider a5, it stops my a-pawn, but you know what? By playing a5, it creates weaknesses on the b6 square, preventing the king from playing long castle. Which I actually accomplished in the game. It's like you throw a punch, and I immediately slide my face, your punch hits the air, and I punch you from a 60-degree angle. That is boxing. We have knight to d7 counter-attacking the bishop, saying, "Bishop, where did you come from?" The bishop replies, "Oh, sorry, I came to the wrong place while following my Google Maps." You know, Google Maps is not so accurate. Last time I used Google Maps to go to a restaurant, but it showed a road where I needed to cross a river. How can I cross a river with my car? That's not possible, that's an illogical thing in Google Maps. Anyway, we have knight f6 to stabilize the structure, and after playing long castle, we have f3 and rook e8, noticing that the dark square is dominated by the bishop, I can eventually play queen e3 to make my queen bishop battery to bring my queen to a7. It's like going to LeelaZero's bedroom at night through a window. Don't be romantic, it's just chess, and we are just chess engines. In a few moves we have queen f2. In this position, some may consider playing rook to g8 in order to push the pawns, but you know what? I can respond with bishop to d4, getting access to this file. e5 might be a desirable move for a few chess players, and consequently, d4 can come. I can capture the pawn on a5, sacrificing the knight right away. But you cannot capture it immediately. Capturing the pawn will open up my queen file, where my queen can easily sweep into a7 with a helicopter to consider queen a8. You have to consider b6 to offer me a queen exchange. Can you guess the best move here? The best move is bishop to e6 check. What a cunning and beautiful sacrifice it is. The queen is protecting these squares, and the rook is controlling that file, which is why you have to capture the bishop. You have to accept my bishop sacrifice because whenever I make any chess piece sacrifices, you have to accept, otherwise, you will be thrown into hell. Now queen c7 is coming, and if you play queen e7 to protect that square, queen to a8 will lead to a checkmate. That's a very great and authentic checkmate, and the game will be over. So returning to the position, LeelaZero does not play any obsessed or absurd-looking moves. Instead, she goes with h4, getting the g3 outpost for the knight, so I played bishop a7. I might consider playing queen b6 to hit the pawn. She immediately played e5, forcing me to consider f4, then her knight arrives at d7, acting as a bodyguard at her house gate, protecting these squares from my invasion. Anyway, let me create another way to reach LeelaZero, e5, creating an outpost on the d6 square, where my bishop can plant itself and eventually connect with my queen on a7 to checkmate her on the queen side. That might be a chess plan, but it is not so accurate, which is why I decided to go with f5, breaking her center structure on the board. Capturing these pawns is not viable. For example, if you capture my f-pawn, then I can sacrifice my knight on the d5 square, because, as I said, my pieces are just made for sacrifices. It's just like chemistry. If you mix sodium with potassium, it will form another liquid, but it will contain the same amount of halogen and other elements. When rook takes d5 comes on the board, supported by the bishop, my pieces occupy the most active squares, like potassium chloride, which reacts with most chemicals to produce colorful visuals. That's the beauty of chess. I involve chemistry too. Rook takes h6 comes to protect the 6th rank, but my rook comes to d1. Eventually, the knight is under attack, but when you try to protect it with your rook, queen takes f5 will come, applying joint pressure on the knight. No matter what you consider, whether it's rook takes e6 or something else, I can play bishop c5, putting pressure on this diagonal. When queen e6 comes, and after the queen exchange, I can even capture your knight. Consequently, bishop takes e6 will come, and you will lose your rook on the d7 square. That's my beautiful strategy in this position. Going back to all the variations, we discovered that e takes f5 is just a vulnerable move. This is why some of you might consider capturing the pawn on e5, which seems reasonable but creates weaknesses on the light squares, allowing rook to e1. When the queen moves to f6, queen e3 will attack the knight. Even though e takes f5 seems logical to protect that knight, I can throw dust in your eyes by capturing the pawn on d5, again, sacrificing the knight to expose the black king. Even though my pieces are creating much pressure on the black king's side, black might be tempted to consider knight g3, but it will create a decisive advantage for me, because after queen c3 comes on the board, your position will be dead lost. Like a tiger hunting its food in the jungle, chess is similar. The bishop hunts the king by playing bishop e6, simultaneously creating pressure on the king's side. After the king captures, queen b3 will come. You can see that the diagonal is paralyzed along with the rook on d1. After queen takes b7, it will be checkmate in just one move, queen d7, and the game will be over. That's the strategy of my position. Going back to all the variations, we discovered that none of the pawns can be captured. LeelaZero seems more authentic because she is my best friend and played knight g3 to protect her position. after capturing the pawn on e6, the light square diagonal becomes weak. I initiate my attack by playing rook to e1, now capturing the pawn on e5 is just a vulnerable move, thinking that your bishop might come to the d6 square to protect the knight. But you know what? Bishop takes d5 can come, sacrificing my piece again. As I already mentioned in physics, you have to make some formulas to get the answer and make the theory proven to be logical. This is why I can experiment with the attack by playing knight takes d5, opening up the two rook files. Whenever you consider bishop to d6 to protect the knight, the best move was to consider rook to d8, but you know what? Knight to b6 check can come, as Newton's third law says, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The knight check comes on the board, and the king has to make his move as an equal reaction to the knight's action, therefore, rook takes e5 will come, and this position is just vulnerable for you. The bishop takes e5 will face rook to d7 check, even if you dare to consider queen takes e5, my queen can arrive at f7. Consequently, my queen will go to the c4 square, as Darwin said in his theory, creatures evolve by their nature to survive, my knight can evolve by playing knight e5, putting pressure on the rook and the king, and simultaneously attacking the bishop. That's my chess evolution. By the way, if you are enjoying my content, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. So, let me make an inspirational quote for you. Just remember, you can do anything you set your mind to, but it takes action, perseverance and facing your fears. Returning to the position, we saw that knight takes e5 is just a vulnerable move. This is why LeelaZero considered bishop b4, trying to block the knight from capturing the pawn on d5, but you know what? I am very disrespectful to all chess engines. Even though LeelaZero is my best friend, I don't want to give her any chances to win the game. Let me fight with my heart. Knight takes d5, sacrificing the rook and the knight simultaneously on the board, but the problem is that if you dare to capture my rook, as I mentioned, knight b6 is a very authentic threat that will come on the board. You cannot capture the knight right away because there is potential harm to the queen on the e6 square. Going back to the position, as the queen is under attack, the rook cannot be captured because the queen will be under attack by the bishop. After the knight capture, we have c3 on the board to block the bishop's diagonal because the d5 pawn is vulnerable and can never go anywhere. We have rook takes d5 in this position. Rook to c5 may come on the board, which is why she responded with queen c6, a very good move. After rook to f8 came on the board to attack my queen, we have queen to g4, putting pressure on the d7 knight. I want to capture her knight, and after the queen captures, bishop to e6 will come, pinning the queen. This is why she moved her king to c7, which is the only best move. After a couple of moves, we have rook to d4 to go to the c4 square to access this file. We have knight to b6, a very good move to defend the position, attacking the rook and putting some pressure on it. So, what should one consider in this position? I know you cannot find the best move, so don't pause the video and try to figure it out. Even Magnus Carlsen could not find this move because, after all, he is human, and human intelligence is only capable of making shoes for my legs. The best move is rook to d6. What a cunning and great move it is. It attacks the queen, and the king has no escaping squares. After the bishop captures the rook, we have queen takes g7 check on the board. The rook cannot block it because the position will be vulnerable, and even the queen cannot block with queen to d7 because I can easily capture your bishop on d6, making the position very fragile for you. The best move is bishop takes b6, moving the king back, making the position fragile for you. Going back to the position, we have the king moving back to c8. After capturing the bishop, we have rook e8, I get the passed pawn, and after a couple of moves, we have queen exchanges on the board and rook c4. You can see that the king has no retreating square, which is why she has to sacrifice her knight. After a couple of moves, we have knight to e4, rook d5, and after a few more moves, rook e1 check followed by rook to e6 and then rook f6, after a few moves. You can see that if an exchange occurs on the a5 square, it would be a very good and brilliant game with LeelaZero. My chemistry with LeelaZero is very interesting and amazing. Don't think of it in a bad way. I mentioned it in an appropriate and respectful manner for chess. You can see that we are just making the pieces dance. I make an h-pawn pass pawn and promote it into a new queen, checkmating her on the b5 square. This was a very good and brilliant game. I hope you enjoyed the game very much. If so, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Wishing you all the best. Bye bye. See ya.